Hello there, and welcome to the weekly Outside Views report on German politics. The president of the Office for the Protection of the Constitution, that's Thomas Haldenwang, has warned of an increase in Chinese espionage in Germany. China is developing a wide range of spying and influence activities. We have to be prepared that these will increase in the coming years. That's what he told the German newspaper Welt am Sonntag. While China's focus used to be on economic espionage, in recent years political spying has also been targeted. Haldenwang expressed to the newspaper the fear that political influence could also arise from economic dependencies. China is pursuing a long-term strategy to implement its goals, says Haldenwang. The political leadership is already using its economic power, which also results from intensive relationships with the German and European economy to implement political goals. As the Welt am Sonntag further reports, the Federal Ministry of the Interior currently has no knowledge that Chinese espionage balloons have flown over Germany. However, it is assumed that Germany is one of China's most important intelligence and influence targets. That's what a spokesman said according to the newspaper. The overflight of a suspected Chinese espionage balloon over the United States has caused a stir and also outrage and new tensions between Washington and Beijing in the past few days. US President Joe Biden had the balloon shot down by a fighter jet over the Atlantic last week when the balloon was no longer over the mainland. In the German so-called traffic light coalition, the dispute over the corona policy of Federal Health Minister Karl Lauterbach is escalating. Liberal Vice Chair Wolfgang Kubicki suggested that the Social Democrat politician resign. The Social Democrats in the Bundestag then demanded that Liberal leader Christian Lindner intervenes. Nobody would accuse Karl Lauterbach of an honorable resignation, is what Kubicki wrote on his Facebook page on Friday. In the entry, the deputy president of the Bundestag sharply criticized the COVID policy of the past 3 years. It has failed particularly in children and the elderly. Children were deprived of life chances with a deliberate creation of fear. Older people in old people's homes were treated inhumanely. Karl Lauterbach was one of those who helped to exclude critical scientific voices, to stir up panic himself, and to shift the borders of the constitutional state, writes Kubicki. If he thinks he can now go about his business with a spontaneous mentality, that would be fatal for the democratic, constitutional, and social process of coming to terms with things. Defense Minister Boris Pistorius is calling for his regular budget to be increased by 10 billion euros. This was reported by the news magazine Spiegel. With a total volume of 60 billion euros, it should remain so for the next few years, the report said. Otherwise, the modernization of the Bundeswehr announced by Chancellor Olaf Scholz would not be possible, the responsible officials argued in the first budget talks. Ammunition, for example, is urgently needed, the procurement of which is not provided for in the special fund of 100 billion euros. Another problem is that the special fund is shrinking due to high inflation. The budget experts in the Ministry of Defense are now apparently assuming that the amount available will be significantly lower than expected. This is reported by the German newspaper Welt am Sonntag. In the current economic plan for the special fund from last November, the ministry still assumes an interest burden to be financed with a total of 7 billion euros. The newspaper reported this, citing a response from Defense Secretary Thomas Hitschler from the Social Democrats to a request from the CDU budget expert Ingo Gerichens. The calculation of this interest expense is updated monthly. If this results in an increase in interest rates, this will be taken into account when updating the economic plan. The Federal Council has stopped the so-called Whistleblower law. This is intended to better protect people who report abuses in authorities or companies from reprisals. The law passed by the Bundestag in December did not receive the required majority in the State Chamber on Friday, although its critics also share the basic concern. However, The states governed by the union complained that the law overshot the target and above all burdened small and medium-sized companies financially and with new bureaucracy. Now an attempt could still be made in the so-called mediation committee of the Bundesrat and the Bundestag to find a compromise. The law regulates reports of fraud, corruption, and other abuses. For example, the notices can relate to violation of environmental protection regulations or a lack of protection of personal data. Such a law is long overdue because Germany should actually have transposed a corresponding EU directive into national law in December 21. In the event of non-implementation, Germany faces infringement proceedings and also high penalties. In the dispute over unauthorized construction work on the Tesla site in Grünheide, Brandenburg's Environment Minister Axel Vogel from the Greens wants to bring the US car manufacturer, associations and authorities to one table. "We have made a proposal for the beginning of March," said a spokesman for the ministry on Friday. "With the discussion, we want to talk to those involved in more detail about the principles of cooperation," they said. According to the Oder-Spree district, Tesla had driven more than 100 stakes into the ground in a parking lot at the Grünheide factory. Tesla wanted to build a roof over the parking lot with solar panels. However, the construction work was stopped because there was no approval, as the spokesman for the district, that is Mario Behnke, announced. The district is very disappointed with Tesla's actions. "We expect the company to set up its internal processes in such a way that such a beginner's mistake cannot be repeated," said the district administration, which is also the approval authority. The pile foundations are currently being investigated by them. Tesla has been producing electric cars in Grünheide near Berlin since March 22. There are currently at least 9,500 employees there. In the first expansion phase, there should be 12,000 employees. The Bundestag debated the possible background to the Nord Stream explosions on Friday. The far-right AfD had demanded a so-called current hour after US journalist Seymour Hersh wrote in a blog post without any evidence and citing a single anonymous source that US Navy divers were responsible for the gas pipeline explosions in the Baltic Sea last September. The Russian leadership also took up the report. The White House dismissed it as false and a fabrication. And this concludes this week's report on German politics. I'll see you on British politics tomorrow, and I'll be back.